guest.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you all for being here. Good afternoon. As our panel comes up, and I'll introduce them as we go forward. Please have a seat. So I was delighted when John Saxon called me a couple of weeks ago and asked that I put together a group of folks to come and talk about A.G. Gaston. I don't know how many of you will recall, and I had to actually think about it because it was 2019. Oh, can you all hear me? It was 2019 when Rochelle, Malone, and I sat here on this very stage to talk about A.G. Gaston. In fact, I get an opportunity to talk about A.G. Gaston a lot. And honestly, one of the things that I really value most is the fact that I've been connected to such a great man. A.G. Gaston was a pillar of our community, an iconic business owner, a person who succeeded against the odds, somebody who, at the date of his birth and the condition of his birth, the economic condition of his family at his birth, you would have thought he could be anything else or have done anything else other than become a very successful multi-millionaire who vertically integrated businesses, and he did it all right here in Birmingham, all right here in Birmingham. And so the Birmingham community, in my opinion, owes a debt of gratitude to A.G. Gaston. Now, since I've been connected to Gaston, and I'm happy about that, I've often been asked, well, how did you know Dr. Gaston? And I guess the textbook answer would be, I worked for his bank from 1984 to 1989. It might have been 18-something. I feel that old sometimes. But the real answer is, if you grew up in Birmingham, you knew who A.G. Gaston was. And in particular, if you went to a black church in the 50s and 60s. So you could imagine black churches, 50s and 60s, didn't have air conditioning. So we had fans. I don't know how many of you have seen a church fan. I know Rochelle has some. And if you picked up a church fan in Birmingham, or really all over Alabama, in all likelihood, you would see A.G. Gaston. And if you flipped it over, you might see a picture of one of his buildings. Or it may be a picture of Dr. Gaston and his wife. And so A.G. Gaston was a master marketer among his other attributes. And so if you went to church, in a black church in Alabama, you likely knew who A.G. Gaston was. If you turned on the radio in Alabama and turned on black radio, you heard advertisement about Booker T. Washington Insurance Company, about Smith & Gaston Funeral Home, Citizens Federal Savings Bank. So he made sure that you knew him. So knowing A.G. Gaston was something that I think all of us felt like we did, whether we worked for him or not. Now I'm going to bring my colleagues in because everyone on this stage has a connection to A.G. Gaston. And I'm going to get into that. But I just want to give you just a few facts about A.G. Gaston. In 1923, he married his childhood sweetheart from Demopolis, Creola Smith. He and Creola's Dad Smith, founded the Smith & Gaston Funeral Home and Booker T. Washington Insurance Company. So he started on his entrepreneurial journey. Once he did that, in order to integrate those businesses, he actually established Mount Zion Cemetery. So one of the adages they used in some of the advertisement was they would cover you from the cradle, all right, to the grave. In order to make sure that there were adequate workers for his companies, which were growing by this time, In 1939, he started the Booker T. Washington Business College. Because you could imagine at that time, black students, black workers weren't being trained to work in office positions because there weren't that many office positions. He created those office positions, and then he trained people to be able to work there. 1954, he erected the A.G. Gaston Motel. It's sitting there now. It is the centerpiece of a national park. It's a national monument. All of that was done by A.G. Gaston. He started Citizens Federal Savings and Loan Association. In 1962, built the $1.5 million, that was a lot at that time, A.G. Gaston building. He is a renowned business owner. He's been inducted into the Alabama Academy of Honor. We just mentioned that he was an inaugural member of the Hall of Fame here at the Kiwanis Club. And he meant so much to this community. And so I'm just always happy and excited to get a chance to come and just share information about A.G. Gaston, what he was, and really what his legacy still does and continues to do for our community. So I am joined by Rochelle Gaston Malone. So if you're connecting the dots, right, Rochelle, as I said earlier, is A.G. Gaston's great-granddaughter. Rochelle has spent time with A.G. Gaston, and she can share personal stories of not just the business mogul, but granddaddy. And I think that it's always important for us to be able to see people, not just from what we see outwardly when they show up, at a corporate event or at a Kiwanis meeting, but that we understand what they were at home. And stories. I've talked to Rochelle. I know stories. I've heard her stories, and she has some great stories about her relationship with her granddaddy, and we're going to get to some of that. Andre'McFadden is the new chief, and I say new because it's been less than a year now. Andre has himself had a very successful business career. Let no one fool you about that. But he's stepped away from that and is giving back in a way that Gaston did, now heading up the A.G. Gaston Boys and Girls Club, which I would describe as the pinnacle of Gaston's philanthropy. It's what he did to give back to boys and girls now. Started off with boys in Birmingham. So Andre, we're happy to have you here. And then Brian Hamilton, who runs the A.G. Gaston Construction Company, a company that A.G. Gaston himself started to take advantage of opportunities. So before I get you all in, I'll just make this statement. It won't be my last today, so trust me on that. But A.G. Gaston left us with some recommendations for success. The most famous one is find a need and fill it. And I paraphrased that. And so I'm going to say that the other thing that Gaston did, and I think all of you have done this, is you found opportunities and seized them. Because if you look at A.G. Gaston, that's exactly what he did. Brian, I'd really like for you to talk a little bit more about your journey and just inform everybody about your connection to A.G. Gaston.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. It's very interesting. I thought about this in preparation for this conversation. So my first connection to Dr. Gaston, Bob talked about most folks seeing him in church or on a fan or master marketer. But I actually saw him in my church. We were church members, and I didn't go to a black church in the 50s and 60s. I went to a black church in the 80s and 90s. And Dr. Gaston was a member of St. John AME Church. And so as a teenager, to see his commitment to faith, as well as his commitment to philanthropy and business, and to see his life example, and at this time he was well in his 90s, and of course he transitioned at 102, but that was my first interaction with Dr. Gaston, just to see his commitment to faith. Interesting enough, all of us know the story of Dr. Gaston being a protege of Carrie A. Tobel, who was also a member of St. John AME Church here in Birmingham. I had the opportunity to attend the school that bears her name, and so my connection to Dr. Gaston is one as a church member, one as a student and a scholar, and finally the honor of making sure that his balance sheet continues to create capital.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Andre, you're like, as I mentioned, you've been in business, you've been in Birmingham. To my knowledge, this is your first connection to A.G. Gaston.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
But coming from business ownership, coming from corporate America, and now stepping into that position with the Boys and Girls Club, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the board chair of the Boys and Girls Club is Brian Hamilton. Talk to us a little bit about how you've embraced the Gaston brand as you run the Boys and Girls Club.
Well, that's been interesting, and I'm the only person here who never met, Dr. Gaston, and so I had to get caught up when I got here. I had to do some reading, and the first thing that stuck out when I was asked was I interested in the CEO role at the Boys and Girls Club was it's the A.G. Gaston Boys and Girls Club. And to give that significance, I think there are only 4 Boys and Girls Clubs in the United States that have a name before Boys and Girls Club. And so that's sort of the significance of him and what the Boys and Girls Club of America feel about him is the A.G. Gaston Boys and Girls Club. And I started thinking, well, why is this? And so I have to read and everything. And I know his signature slogan, find a need and fill it. And I'm like, let's not be impressed by that, find a need and fill it. Anybody who ever had, Business 101 knew that. But then you do get impressed because how many people, well, first of all, he didn't have business class, So he didn't go to business school. He learned this on his own. And then after that, find a need and fill it. How many people actually do that and do it over? And you get more impressed. And again, and you get more impressed. And again, more impressed. And then you start saying, wow, he's at a level that very few people are. Almost no one does that. And so my respect for him just grows and grows and grows every day. And I didn't have the honor of seeing him move around town and talking to him and getting knowledge that way. So I'm reading after the fact. But boy, can you imagine? Just all of the companies that he started, all the people that he helped, all the people that he mentored. And so many people talk about we don't have anybody to look at to sort of model ourselves after. And you can't really find someone bigger than that to model yourself after. And then considering that the Boys and Girls Club is sort of the pinnacle of how he wanted his legacy to continue on, I just feel honored again that I'm able to take that and sort of instill little bits of that into the young people who come through the club every day a little bit. Hopefully, we're building on it, and then by the time they, go off to Too Old for the Boys and Girls Club, they are totally immersed in what he thought, what things he believed, what he thought was possible, which was pretty much everything. And so hopefully they have that view too by the time they leave the club, and then they can come back and help us out a little bit later.
Very
but
good.
yeah, it's been a very good journey for me getting to know him through reading.
Well, I will say that the club is fortunate to have you step into this role.
Thank you.
You are atypical for when you look at the leaders we've had. So, and I say we because I'm embracing the club too. So, Rochelle, you are grandbaby girl. I don't know if that's what he called you or not, but he was granddaddy to you. But you also worked in his companies. And so you've got, a couple of different perspectives that I'd love for you to share with the audience.
Yes, so my grandfather, of course, he when he passed away, he was 103. So when I met him, he was a very old man. However, he was very spry and very energetic. Like most young people, I spent weekends and holidays, any day that I could get an opportunity to go to Granddaddy's house. I spent those times. Sometimes it was supposed to be just for the day, and I would talk my mother into allowing me to spend the night. And sometimes those nights went into days. And we spent a lot of time together. He loved family. he loved to grill. He wasn't a chef or anything like that, but grilling was his thing. And he would cook everybody's steak before he prepared his, because his was only going to be on that grill all of 4 minutes. 2 minutes on one side, 2 minutes on the other. So his steak was practically mooing when he ate it. That might be the secret to why he lived so long. But he loved family. We spent a lot of time at the house. He loved to swim. That was one of his things he did for exercise, which frightened me at times because his strokes, it took him a very long time to bring that other arm over, to bring his arm in and glide through and bring that other arm over. And I would just watch intensively, is he going to come up this time? And then we spent a lot of time at the lake on his property fishing. And I don't know if you want me to share that now. We spent a lot of time at the lake. Little did I know then that was his think tank. That's when he probably made a lot of the decisions that he made as to how he was going to move forward, if he was going to move forward, who he was going to move forward with, who he was no longer going to move forward with. And like most little girls, I was inquisitive, I was chatty, I had a lot of questions. So when you take a little girl to the fishing pond, which doesn't know that's a quiet sport, she's going to talk. And I'll constantly say, why don't you go down there on the other end of the lake and look for fish for me? And every time I saw one, I'd run back to the dock where he was, and I said, I saw this fish, and I'm trying to be descriptive with everyone. He says, I understand. Oh, that's such great news. But could you just go back down there and stay and watch them? Don't let them leave. That was his way of finding his quiet time. And I didn't realize that until I got older. I said, Granddaddy, why didn't you just tell me it was a quiet sport? He says, well, I liked your enthusiasm. I didn't want to squash that. So I just didn't say anything. I just wanted you to be around. So that was his answer to that. So our days were our times together like most families. Sunday dinners after church, we would always meet and go to dinner for church. I remember times at Joy Young that was downtown, and we had to go through the back door. And I couldn't understand. I said, Granddaddy, why can't we just walk through the front door? You know, I'm a little girl. I don't know these things. And I really wasn't taught in my household about separation and racism and things of that nature. And so he said, this is just the way we go, and just come on in here and don't talk much, because I had a lot of questions. And so those are just some of the fun memories that I have. As he got older, before he passed away, I had an opportunity to live with him and care for him on a daily basis, and to watch him interact with my daughter, who was right at a year old at that time, was great. He loved kids and things of that nature. So through my years after his passing, I have found that I have some of the same passions that he has. I'm a former educator. I have thrived over the years to make sure that I instill in young people the importance of educating themselves, the importance of having goals and seeking a future of career, not just finding a job, but career. And we all know that there's a difference in that. Those are some things that were deposited in me indirectly, just being in his presence and seeing him operate, taking me to lunch when I reached for the salt before tasting my food, and getting a lesson in understanding how to make business decisions. You don't salt your food before you eat it. That tells people that you have a preconceived notion about what you're about to embark on. So those were business tips that he gave me at the lunch table. We weren't just eating, but he was educating me on business.
It's still amazing to think of the great A.G. Gaston, a multimillionaire, still, because he was black, having to enter the back door of a restaurant. That's something to think about, especially when you consider the fact that that wasn't that long ago. We're talking 60 years ago,
Right.
maybe,
Well,
or
not
less.
that long, a
Not
little
even-
less.
Oh, my bad.
I'm
Not that
25, that's my story,
25
I'm
years.
sticking to it.
Forgive my error. So, Brian, you know, legacy is important. We often think about legacy in looking at businesses, the age of businesses, the fact that businesses can be passed on from a generation to another, or that they even last through generations. So the both of you are heading up, and I think I'm right, the last remaining organizations that Gaston started, Boys and Girls Club Construction Company. That's heavy.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like for you to
Yeah, you know, let me tell you how I think about it. You started with your remarks that, you know, Dr. Gaston started his entrepreneurial exercises in 1923. That's 100 years, right? And the responsibility that we all have to steward that legacy of success, of resiliency, of community impact is something that we take very seriously. And so if he could do what he did during a time without the resources that we all have today, you know, it's incumbent upon all of us to do what we can to extend that legacy and his unique position in this particular community. One of the things I think about I just think about what business leaders are going through today in terms of how they're navigating the dynamics of the economy. And you've got this concept out there about how, you know, do CEOs get involved in social issues, or, you know, can I just stay in my bubble, run my business, take care of my shareholders, employees, stakeholders? And is there a need or a necessity for folks who are generating capital to step in to solve community problems? And, you know, that's not new, right? The very act of Dr. Gaston being an entrepreneur was an act of social engagement here in Birmingham. You know, if you think about, you know, the motel, it was bombed, right? You know, if you think about the dynamics behind the scene of the Birmingham Business Council, of how the folks were behind the scenes negotiating with the political power structure to ease the tensions, Dr. Gaston was right in the middle of that, using his resources to bail out demonstrators, even though he may not have agreed with the direct confrontation. He was using his political capital or his business relationships to put pressure on some of his peers to make sure that they put pressure on the political infrastructure, all while navigating the social nuances of being a black guy that didn't have a college education. Right? That's putting your capital at risk. How many of us would do that today? Right? You think about the CEO of Dick's Sporting Goods, right? 2018 after Parkland shooting, and Dick's Sporting Goods decides they're going to put capital at risk and they're going to not sell certain products, right? Because they don't want to be a part of the narrative, the kind of leadership that's required and necessary for our communities to thrive. We have that in A.G. Gaston, right? All of us in this room have a responsibility to make that kind of commitment, right? And it's up to us at what level you're going to commit. But A.G. Gaston committed. He did. And I think 100 years later, we're sitting around the table celebrating that level of commitment. So I take it very seriously. It is almost a sacred responsibility.
Well, thank you for doing that. So, Andre, not only does your organization bear the name of A.G. Gaston, you're also helping to shape future generations.
Yes.
And that's awesome. And again, I guess thinking about protecting and expanding on what he did and his legacy is awfully important.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that his legacy is as broad as possible. Again, I know Dr. Gaston through reading, and so I read that he did a lot of things, but I noticed that he didn't put color on things. He didn't say, black people find a need and fill it. He said, find a need and fill it. That sort of applies to everyone, and I'm trying to make sure that he doesn't get marginalized over time where his teachings were just for a small pocket of the population when they apply to the whole population. And when I'm looking at the Boys and Girls Clubs, the needs, we serve predominantly Birmingham, but I know that the needs of our young people in Birmingham are the same as the needs of the young people in Hoover and Mountain Brook and Homewood, and you just keep going out, the needs are the same. And so I could take what we try to teach in our club every single day and take that model and put it almost anywhere, because he never put a color on it, and it's appropriate to all of them. And so for me, I'm just trying to make sure the organization is as strong as possible, because at the end of the day, the Boys and Girls Club is a business, and he was famous for creating businesses. So I want to make sure that business is as strong as possible, and then I want to make sure that his message goes out as broadly as possible, because the needs are pretty consistent across, all socio-demographic groups. That's what I'm trying to do.
That's great. That's great. So I think if you study A.G. Gaston's history, one might say he was a natural-born entrepreneur. He charged buttons and pens to ride on his swing as a little kid in Demopolis. So kids didn't have money, but a button looked like money. A pen shined, it looked like money. So it represented currency to children 6, 7, 8 years old in Demopolis. His mother, and I don't think that we give his mother enough credit. His mother was a domestic, that's what we call him, but she also was an entrepreneur. And we never really think about that. But his mother worked for the Loveman's family, but she catered on the side. So she had her own business. It may have been a side hustle or whatever you want to call it, but she was able to do business. And his mother was his first business partner. I read the thing about Dad Smith, but he worked at the mines in Westfield, and he would bring a good lunch to work, and the men at the mines wanted a piece of that chicken sandwich. And so he went to his mother and he said, I think we can make some money here. You make enough lunches for me to sell a lot. So this man really kind of just took to entrepreneurship without any training, without business school, without the MBA, without any of the things that we see business owners and rightfully strive for.
Without capital.
Without capital, yeah. So just a phenomenal person who did what he did again against the odds. Just wanted to share that. I want to get more into what's happening today at the Boys and Girls Club, because we got a room full of potential supporters. So I want to get that out. But I want to share this, and Rochelle, I'll come to you, because I have these memories of Gaston from when I worked at the bank, and I often think about Saturday mornings at Citizens Federal. Saturday morning was a day, banks were, up until, I guess, the 70s, didn't open on Saturdays. But in the 70s, maybe 80s, banks started opening on Saturdays, and Citizens was open on Saturdays when I worked there. Now, I didn't have anything to do on Saturdays. I ran the loan department. Nobody was going to try to get a loan. We certainly weren't going to make one. But you knew that the old man was going to be there. That's what his affectionate name to us was, the old man. It was accurate. You knew he was going to be there, and he was going to be sitting in the lobby of the bank at one of the customer service desks, not at a big desk, not in his office, and he was going to be sitting there just really laughing and joking and meeting all the customers that come in. And so what I think about, though, are peanuts.
I was just about to say that.
Okay.
Eating his peanut.
You want to tell the peanut story?
You can go ahead.
Okay, so anybody, if you've eaten peanuts, right, the husk fall everywhere. So he'd be sitting up there laughing, joking, peanut hulls, all in his lap, all on the floor. And that is a memory that I have sort of etched in my mind. Saturday morning at the bank, the old man with a lap full of peanut husks. So, other than all right, your turn.
I do want to piggyback to the businesses because to buttons and the swings. What a lot of people don't know, his grandmother was a seamstress. So there was a business prior to the lunches, and there was financial, increase from the buttons, charging the kids buttons on the swings. I don't know if he really thought about it, but those parents had to come back to this seamstress to replace these buttons on their clothes.
I'm pretty sure he thought it.
I think he thought about it as well. But that was actually, I share this when I go and talk, that was really the very first business because it created an opportunity for income for his family, for his grandmother. So, yeah, I think he did. He probably knew, hey, my grandmother's a seamstress. If I can get, these kids want to ride my swing, okay, you bring all the buttons. And of course, they were going to need to be replaced and reattached to the clothing. So I always say that was his first business venture. Very smart, I would say. As far as, yes, the Saturdays, the peanut husk went beyond the bank. In the car, there would be peanut husks. We would make frequent stops down at the peanut depot. He loved that place. Or someone would always come by and deliver and bring him a hot bag of peanuts. That was one of his many things that he enjoyed. But with the Boys and Girls Club, I think that if he could come back now and see all of the great things that are being included in the daily activities of the kids, the technology, there's a podcast studio, they're able to record and create their own podcasts, and there's just so many opportunities for entrepreneurial endeavors for them to embark on. It's a great atmosphere, and that's why I have adopted the Boys and Girls Club as my fundraiser that I do every year. That's a way that my family can give back and pour back into them, and to try to support the mission of the club, as well as be a visible part, let children know that Dr. Gaston's family is touchable and reachable to them, and we are here for them, and as they matriculate through life.
So I see another one of the A.G. Gaston Boys and Girls Club board members, Andre'McFadden, is there. Andre. So I brought some things. Now, this is, and I know you probably can't see this. Until today, until just about an hour ago, I thought this was the original copy of Green Power. But Rochelle tells me it's actually...
I'd have to see it without the cover.
Oh, okay. It may not be. The Green Power book that
It is.
This is the original.
It is.
This is the original. Let me...
The one I have is...
This is the one that probably was most popular. It's a paperback edition. Same book. And then the latest rendition, and this was actually sponsored by Alabama Power Company. John Hudson was responsible, I think, the impetus behind doing this. But we got another one coming out. You want to talk about that and see if we can raise some money in here for the Boys and Girls Club?
Yeah, sure. I got called downtown, sounded like I went to the principal's office, to the city, and the city wanted to give out some copies of Green Power to some, students within the Birmingham City School District, and could not find any. and they went on, you'll find this amazing, they went on Amazon, and there was one used copy that was for sale for over $1,000. A used copy. And so they reached out to, Councilman Woods reached out to me and said that the city was interested in reprinting copies of this just so they could share it with, students and whomever else wanted them. And so, of course, we signed up for that. And so we are finalizing everything. I think we're about done with who's going to actually do the printing and how many copies and things like that. And so the city is going to fund that, which is going to be great for us. But then after the sales of the books, that's going to come to the Boys and Girls Club as a fundraiser for us. So we're very happy for that. It'll be a fundraiser for us, but more importantly, that book will be able to go out far and wide to the next generation of students. And kids are creative. Who knows what they're going to see into that book after they read it and what they're going to accomplish. So I'm really pumped up about that. So that should be happening pretty soon, as a matter of fact. I know they were finalizing what's going to be on the cover, the design, and all that kind of stuff. And I think we've about narrowed it down. So
Very good.
Really happy about that.
And I will say that when you're thinking about an organization that's worthy of your support, the A.G. Gaston Boys and Girls Club is that organization. So I want to make sure we get that in.
Thank you.
We're going to have questions. We have a little time for some questions from the audience. I see a couple of folks. Yes, Beth?
Thank you so much for this program today. I think it's great. And when you talk about A.G. Gaston, I've always heard that if you want to help a child, and that's what we're about here, is help that child's mom and daddy get a job. And that's what he did, and that's so great. But having said that, I'm very interested in the Boys and Girls Club, and I would hope that maybe we'll schedule you for a program sometime. And I'd like just maybe today for you just to talk a little bit about the age range of the children, the number of kids you serve. Is it just available to those that are able to commute to your program, or what's your outreach? I want to hear more about it.
Well, right now, the club, we have 2 sites. Well, actually, I'm sorry, we have 4 sites. We had 2 sites when I started. We now have 4. And we reached, our footprint is pretty much the Birmingham City Schools and Bessemer. And there are certain schools that we have a bus, we go and we pick them up and we bring them to our Howlett facility, which is beautiful. I suggest you come visit if you haven't been there. It's very beautiful. But we are actually in talks with the Birmingham City Schools to become their primary provider of after-school care, after-school programming. And so they said, we have 40 schools, how many can you take? And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I don't know, Brian and I have to have a lot of conversations surrounding that. But then as I mentioned early, in addition to just the Birmingham City Schools, we started going out a little bit further. Right now, early stages of talking about a location in Vestavia, which would be great. And then, there are other things that we're talking about. But you can either have parents bring the kids to the facility. If you're in one of the schools, we'll get busing and we'll bring you to our facility, and we're trying to expand that all the time. And so when he's talking about being a donor to the Boys and Girls Club, is that we're trying to expand. We're just trying to expand because the issues that the kids have in our facility are the same issues that all the kids have.
Is there an upper age limit?
No, we go from 1st grade to 12th grade. And so there was big conversations about K and pre-K, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. So not quite yet.
Henry?
Well, thank you very much for most interesting program. And there's one area that y'all haven't touched on and that I really would be interested to know. During the turbulent times in Birmingham, and we had the Bull Conference, we had a governance that was so evil. How did Dr. King interact, for instance, with Dr. King, the letter from the Birmingham jail? Where was he during that period of time? Can y'all address that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Henry. Thank you for bringing it up. Here's how I think about it. Where was Dr. King? He was in Dr. Gaston's facilities. And Dr. Gaston was a thought partner. He had more to lose by the direct conflict and putting pressure on the economics. But he also had a social responsibility to support the growth and development of the native-born Black Americans, particularly here in Birmingham. So as a financier, he financed a lot of the activity in the movement, posted bail for a lot of the marchers that were in the movement, paid for legal counsel. He provided the facilities for the strategies. He was the thought partner, and he did not always agree, and in fact didn't agree with Fred Shuttlesworth and Dr. King. But he still supported, right? And that was sort of kind of what I alluded to in terms of what we do here as a business group collectively. You know, what are we putting at risk, right? He was betting the farm every time without a particular return on investment, if you will. So, you know, without Dr. Gaston and others like him, but particularly him, you would not have had a successful, direct sort of intervention in terms of social disobedience to really bring the nation and really put a spotlight and force some of the things that were going on. You had to have sort of the carrot and the stick, and he was on both sides of that.
Yeah, and I'll just add, that, and I totally agree. Gaston was uniquely positioned at that time. He was already connected to the business community, including the white business community. And so Gaston was able to have and share influence, certainly that Dr. King or Reverend Shuttlesworth weren't going to be able to.
That's right.
Those are doors that were going to be shut to them because of their stances. He didn't disagree with the struggle for civil rights. He did disagree with using the children in the Children's March. Now, you can always look back, and hindsight is always 20/20, as to whether that was the right move or not, and I think you could still make some arguments either way. But he certainly didn't, and he talked about, even when I was in the bank, how he sat on the third floor of that blue building that's sitting there on the corner of Fifth Avenue and 16th Street right now, and watched the hoses and the dogs and the kids being assaulted by the Birmingham Police Department. And that did not sit well with him. Right. But you're right, as a moral supporter, as a financier, but as a man with his own opinion who was going to give it to you. And he didn't necessarily agree with you because of your name or what you had done in the past. He was going to tell you what he thought. And based on where he came from, you know, that was his thinking. You can argue about it, you could criticize it, but you can't take that away from him. He had every right to feel the way he felt about the actions that were taking place, but he was definitely supportive of the movement that was taking place. So, do we have time? I don't know. I'm going to get a signal. Andre?
Got a couple more minutes if we've got.
Yeah.
Make one quick comment. Like Bob mentioned, I'm Dr. McFadden, know many of you all here. Most of y'all know I'm a physician in UAB, officer at UAB Highlands. I guess you guys may not have known I'm a board member of the A.G. Gaston Boys and Girls Club. And the reason I decided to give my time like that is really similar to the reason I decided to become a Kiwanis member, which is because, you know, at heart, I'm an educator. My mom and sister both retired from the Birmingham public school system. 3 of my 4 grandparents were all educators teaching in City of Bessemer, City of Birmingham, and Vestavia school system. So I care about the kids. What I can tell you about the Boys and Girls Club is that we are working directly to really combat some of the challenges faced by the kids here in the City of Birmingham. We hear about them all the time. The mayor's here. We've heard from different members of the school system administration. We all know about the challenges facing the school system here. What
conflict resolution, we're attacking all of those things to really get to the root of some of the problems to produce a good outcome. So when Bob threw it out there, they were looking for some contributions. And that's a real thing, because all those things we're doing, it requires some funding. So I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it being a board. I was also a member of the A.G. Gaston Boys and Girls Club growing up in Birmingham myself, so I know what it's capable of. So I want to share my thoughts about that when y'all think about it.
Thank you, thank you. Listen, Brian Hamilton, Andre'McFadden, Rochelle, Gaston, Malone, thank you all for being here today. Let's give them a round of applause.
So great panel. I know we all, as Birminghamians, knew of Dr. A.G. Gaston and the Boys and Girls Club, but I think we've all learned a lot today. Just great presentation. One more round of applause. I actually took some notes, from the Button Enterprise. I think early model of economic development. That's a great story. And, certainly the find a need and fill it motto and way of thinking is something we should all take away. So thank you all again. We appreciate it. Rochelle, Gaston, Malone, Andre'McFadden, Brian Hamilton, and of course Bob Dickerson, our fellow Kiwani, and we appreciate the time today. In appreciation of your time with us here, we're going to make a donation in your names to, of course, the A.G. Gaston Boys and Girls Club.
Thank you.
We are looking forward to seeing everyone next week as we host Bennett Wright, the Executive Director for the Alabama Sentencing Commission, and hope to see you. Bring a friend. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.